What's going on, everybody? Commander Crane here today, and I've actually got a little bit of a different video for today. I'm starting a new series called Crane's Chronicles. I'm going to be telling some different stories about really honestly gaming and non-gaming. Specifically for gaming, it's probably just going to be like Magic and Pokemon, and then I might tell some other personal life stories depending on how the series goes. But yeah, I figured we would jump right into it. I know I've been working on some different ideas and stuff like that instead of just streaming and throwing on YouTube. I figured I would actually do some directly to YouTube content. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be telling a story. By the way, not scripted at all. This is just what I'm thinking of as time goes on in the video. So today I'm actually going to be telling the story. Probably my favorite Magic story. Well, maybe not favorite, but it's definitely very near to my heart. So this is actually going to be about my very first big top 8 in Magic. So for the few of you that don't play Magic and are watching this, so basically when you go to big Magic tournaments, the idea is you want to make top 8. So top 8, basically you play through rounds, and try and win. And then at the end, depending on the size of the tournament, there's going to be a top cut single elimination, and only the top 8 get to advance, unless in very specific tournaments. Sometimes there's only top 4, but that's pretty rare. So ideally, success in Magic is measured based on top 8s. Like, that's kind of how you set yourself apart from other Magic players for the most part. And this one in particular was Star City Games Baltimore. It was in the Classic tournament, which I'll explain a little bit later, the fundamentals about that tournament. But this was my big top 8 I've had. Still, my biggest top 8. I know for some players it's definitely not their biggest, but at least for me, I'll give a little bit of backstory, but this is why this tournament means so much. So before we just jump right into the tournament, though, I have to give a little bit of backstory, but it will make sense as time goes on. So going back a little bit further, at the time, so when I first started playing competitive Magic, it was fall of 2017. I had gone to a handful of tournaments, nothing too crazy, but I'd always built my own decks. And the biggest thing was I always built decks based on what cards I wanted to play. So, for instance, if anyone has seen my streams, I really like playing big red and green creatures. That's always been what I like to play. And at the time I was playing this red-white control deck, basically, where it's just countless removal board wipes, and then you would finish off with some planeswalkers or some dragons. I played that for a very long time, and it was one particular tournament. Was in 2018. I believe it was April. I had not had my first top 8 yet, but I was very, very close. I made it to the final round with a win in, meaning if I win, I get to make top 8. If I lose, I'm out. And I had a really, really big crushing defeat. It was against a very, very good player. I'm not going to go into specifics, but they played pretty well. Mostly what happened is in the first game I did win. Second and third game I did have to mulligan very, very low, so I wasn't able to pull out the win, which was at the time very crushing. Eventually getting another top 8 later in Standard. But we're not going to talk about that too much. But the basis of the story is I always liked playing decks. I usually built my own. For some examples, like I'm going to give today, I did technically base it off of another deck, but made it a lot different. And I'll go in more detail, and it'll make more sense in a second. I just had to give some backstory. So anyways, the deck I actually played, I know some of you may know, but it was a deck called Red Green Land Destruction, or Ponza. And Ponza basically is a deck where you want to cut your opponent off of resources while establishing your own. Basically, it's almost like an Anaconda, where you just tightly wound, if that makes sense. You just want to be able to cut them off the resources and then finish them off. And I started playing the deck in summer of 2018. 18. Yes, 2018. There was a card that was unbanned called Bloodbraid Elf. I won't go into the specifics of Bloodbraid Elf if you'd like to. I will leave links in the description for cards that I do talk about. So Bloodbraid Elf was unbanned, which was making the deck Ponza very popular. At the time, I had never ever considered playing a somewhat established deck. But at the time, I knew I was really, really close for being able to cut into top 8. And I really just wanted to play something that I would like, but that was still somewhat established as a decent deck. So one day, I just wrote down cards I wanted to play, those cards being Stormbreath Dragon, Carnage Tyrant, and Blood Moon were the main 3 I wanted to play. And after a little consideration, I said, you could actually play Ponza with that. So I played a very different list for Ponza. I know typically at the time it was Bloodbraid Elf, cascading into smaller spells. It was kind of the whole basis of the deck. You didn't go too big. Well, me, personally, I like to go big with creatures. So I played a more old school style of Ponza, which instead of playing Bloodbraid Elf, I was playing Monvali Acid Moss, which I will explain. I'll show what that card does later. But the big story is instead of playing smaller, mid-sized creatures, I wanted to go big. I had played the deck a decent amount. I did a lot of tweaking. And after a little while, decided to go to the tournament last second, actually, with a group of friends. We decided about a week or 2 before that we were going to go to Baltimore. So I decided the deck I was going to play. I was going to play Ponza. Went to the tournament. So a little bit of context before. So one of my teammates, I'm not going to mention his name, but he really did not want me to play Ponza. He said it because at the time, it was not very well positioned. For those who are very familiar with the modern metagame, at the time, Graveyard was very big. The biggest decks at the format at the time were Dredge. Dredge was the best deck. And then number 2 was actually the new, you would know it as Is It Phoenix, but when the deck first started, it was Mono Red Phoenix. Both of which were not very good matchups for my deck, but I felt really confident in all the other matchups. Like against Tron, Scapeshift. I built my deck for Blue-Eye Control, basically. And I'll go into detail more. But that was kind of the basis of my deck. I knew it wasn't exactly well positioned, but I want to play what I like to play. If I'm not having fun playing Magic, a deck, I'm not going to play it. That's simply how it goes. So, go to the tournament. So for those who are unfamiliar with Star City Games tournaments, they run like this. So on Saturday, you have the Star City Games Open, which the Open is just a big tournament. There's a total of 15 rounds, or 16. 15 or 16. 15. And you play 9 rounds the first day. You have to go at least 7-2, sometimes 6-3, to be able to make day 2. They don't let everybody into day 2. It's very hard to get to day 2. So I felt pretty confident. Fast forward, the 6-3 was the cut to make day 2. At the time, I was 4-1, made it pretty far into the tournament. I don't remember a lot of the specific matches from the actual Open, but I know a lot of them were really close. I had really good matchups. At one point in the tournament, I sat at 4-1, which was looking really good. I just had to win 2 more games, so pretty good. Just had to win half of my games. Unfortunately, had some really bad streaks, had some really bad matchups. Found myself at 5-3. So I had to win my last one. Ended up playing against a deck, Bant Spirits. Pretty good matchup for me. Unfortunately, had a really crushing defeat. I couldn't draw any red mana at all, and I had all red cards in my hand, and I ended up losing in game 3, which was very, very, very crushing. I came really, really close. That was going to be my first day 2 for a Grand Prix, or Open. Unfortunately missed out, which was very, very crushing at the time. So we get back to the hotel, because it was in Baltimore, obviously live in Michigan, so that's quite a drive. I'm honestly debating if I even wanted to play in the Classic the next day, which the Classic, I'll get into detail with that, is a smaller tournament. It's only one day, but they're generally pretty big. You get a decent amount of people, and most of the time there's 8-9 rounds of Magic. So they're still pretty important. You make top 8, you can get really, really good prizes. Instead of getting cash prizes, you can win in-store credit or tickets, as in like Chuck E. Cheese, when you get all the tickets and you can go cash in your prizes. They do something like that, which you can turn into store credit, which is what most people do. So I was on the fence about if I wanted to play in the Classic. And at the end of the day, I decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Which, little did I know, that was probably one of the biggest moments in my Magic career, was actually deciding to play in the Classic. So I actually do have my results, and I can remember them a little bit, my matches, but I'm going to go right to the spoilers. So I ended up making top 8 in this tournament, and it felt unreal. This was my second top 8, and it felt weird. Like, it was a pretty good sized tournament. Played against a lot of good people. Managed to make top 8. I unfortunately did lose in the finals. It was really, really close. My opponent played pretty good Magic. I'll actually go into more detail about him later, but it was really, really close. Unfortunately, there was a plaque if you win, and I didn't get anything for second place. I got plenty of credit, but it was really disappointing because if I had a plaque, it'd be right there. Be right there if I won that plaque. Fortunately, didn't win the plaque, but it was still really, really nice to make top 8. I know my teammates were very happy and mad at the same time because they're really happy for me, but at the same time, we also had a 13-hour drive home, so we didn't get home till very, very late. But nevertheless, it was a really, really fun tournament, and I'd like to go into a little bit more detail, some more behind-the-scenes things that I haven't actually explained to a lot of people. So I guess the first base I'll go into my matches here. I'm gonna have to shrink my screen here a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I do want to go into different matches and stuff like that. So I guess the first thing I'll go into here is these are my actual matches that I played. I remember having this a long time ago. This note is a couple of years old at this point. So, all right. So pretty simple. So Swiss rounds. So first one, played against Blue-White Control. This guy in particular, I do remember some details about. So I actually played against this same gentleman and in the Open, and he was playing Scape Shift, which is a very good matchup for me. So I figured going into this, he was going to be playing Scape Shift as well. And then I was very surprised. And when he went turn 1, Celestial Colonnade. So I said, whoa, all right. We ended up winning, though. Long story short, my experience playing against Blue-White Control, my deck was very built for it. Easiest way to beat him is you keep him off of white mana, because they cannot Supreme Verdict. That's basically the main way. I can put as many creatures out as I want, as long as I could keep them off of the white mana. That's exactly what I did. So, ended up getting the easy 2-0. Second round, Blue-White Spirits. So this was actually hilarious. And actually, this is a typo. I just realized that. That was Bant Spirits, which is green, blue, white. So I played against this guy in the tournament yesterday as well. So we both knew what we were playing. And I kind of felt bad for him a little bit. So basically, both games, I had the best possible hand I can have, and he was not very happy. He ended up actually making top 16, I believe, as well. So he still had a pretty good run, but he was not very happy about losing to me. So, third round, Mono Green Tron. It was pretty simple. First game, destroy lands. Second game, he got to turn 3 Tron. I wasn't really able to do anything. And then the third game, I had a very good hand with Land Destruction, Blood Moon. You know, pretty much what you want to be doing. So I ended up getting the win there. More on him later, actually. So, next round, Hardened Scales Affinity. So this was one of my bad matchups as well. Affinity, overall, just not a good matchup for me, especially the Hardened Scales version. So basically what happened is the first game, he ran me over. I was dead so fast. I hardly could even do anything. Second game, I had a very, very explosive hand. At least from my understanding, what I remember is I played a turn 3 Inferno Titan, and he could not beat it. So the third game was actually very interesting in the fact that I was almost dead on board. He was going to get me the next turn. I had a Chandra that was about to ultimate. I had an Anger of the Gods in my hand. My only out was if I drew Shatterstorm. I Shatterstormed the board. He has Hangerback Walker in play. It destroys. It was going to make 13 Thopters. And then I anger the tokens. And then I can win on the back of Chandra. So that was what I had to do. So that was my only draw. I had to block with my Tireless Tracker. Go to draw. And it was the one copy of Shatterstorm in the sideboard. Which, Shatterstorm, he did all of his triggers. Put all the counters on. Boom. I ended up winning it with Chandra Ultimate. But that was a very, very crazy game. I was surprised to get out of that. So, Next round, Arclight Red, which is Mono Red Phoenix. So this was pretty self-explanatory. The first game, he had a very quick hand, bringing back all the Phoenixes. Second game, I had a very explosive hand, was able to just run him over really, really fast. Third game was very, very grindy. It ended up in a top deck war, which he ended up winning. But it was really, really, really close. It was a really fun game. More on him later if you haven't seen that down there. So I knew going into this, I already had one loss now. So there was a good chance that 2 losses was not going to be good enough for top 8. So I knew I had to be on my A game. So next round, it's very discerning when your opponent goes turn 1 sleight of hand and you're on Ponza. Because that means it's probably Storm, and Storm is a very, very bad matchup. So first game, he stormed me out. Game 2, I drew about every anti-Storm tactic you can possibly have. I believe I went turn 2 Trinisphere, which just shuts him down. I went turn 3 Acid Moss, which he actually managed to get through the Trinisphere and destroy it with an Abrade. And then on turn 4, I actually played a Rurik Thar, which those who don't know, Rurik Thar is a big 6/6 where whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you take 6 damage. Storm can't beat that, so he folded to it. So this third game was probably one of the most interesting Ponza hands I've ever had, meaning I had no ramp. I had to play everything on curve. But everything I played on curve was very impactful on the board. For instance, I went turn 1 Relic, which keeps him out of his graveyard. Turn 2, I played a Scavenging Ooze, so it's just able to get out of the graveyard. So basically, the rest of the game was spent keeping 1 mana open just so I can crack the Relic if I ever needed to if he was going to go off on Storm. It basically resulted in the very end, me playing on turn 7, a Rurik Thar, no ramp, keeping 1 mana open for the Relic. Ended up winning. And it was crazy. And I remember him saying to me, I cannot believe I just lost to Ponza, which was hilarious. Overall, I was really, really excited about that. And I knew I was going into my last round. I knew if I won this next round, I could intentional draw and I go into the top 8. So my opponent, I'm on the play. I go turn 1 Utopia Sprawl. My opponent goes turn 1 Urza's Tower. So obviously it's a really pretty good matchup for me. So I knew going into this, I had a good chance of winning it. I ended up winning the first game. The second game, I had a very slow hand. My opponent was able to play his big threats and be able to take care of me. So game 3, I'm nervous. I'm shaking. I don't usually shake when it comes to Magic, at least at this time. I kind of got out of it a little bit, but I knew this one was going to be tough. So 2 major points I want to cut to in the game. So there was at one point my opponent was going to be able to crack his Oblivion Stone the next turn, and he was going to be able to get rid of my Blood Moon. So I believe I had just a Tireless Tracker at the time out, but I knew I needed to draw a land destruction spell or I was probably going to lose the game. So I'm praying. Off top of my deck, I draw a Stone Rain. So I'm able to destroy his land, keep getting in for damage, cut all the way to the end. He has 6 lands in play. I have no cards in hand. He's at 7 life. I draw, and I draw Carnage Tyrant, which, for those of you who don't know, very big, scary monster dinosaur that if you've seen my streams you would have seen. But it is hexproof. He's at 7. It's a 7/6. So I know if you can't answer it, he's going to go down. And they don't really gain life, so it was going to have to need a top deck with like an All is Dust. So go to his turn. I'm nervous as heck. He draws. He plays the land. So at this point, if he has All His Dust, I'm probably going to lose. If he doesn't, if he has anything else, I'm going to win the game. He looks at me for a second and he goes, it's really unfortunate that you had Carnage Tyrant. And he plays a Karn Liberated, which is not able to exile my Carnage Tyrant. So I barely win against Tron. And at that point, I was ecstatic. I knew I was going to get the intentional draw and then be able to go into the top 8. So next, sure as heck, next round, got the intentional draw, made it into the top 8. So at this point, I'm pretty excited, and I'm ready to play some more Magic. At this point, I didn't really have an idea who was going to be in top 8. So let's get right into it. Actually, one thing I want to show real quick I actually have footage of them announcing my top 8. I've had this video for a while. I don't think really that many people have seen it, so I figured I'd show that to you guys real quick. I'm sure you'd probably appreciate that. So, this is the video of me making top 8. Don't mind the people down there, but... That was my friend Jimmy. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for that part of the video. Yeah. So, that was pretty fun. It's a different feeling when you hear your name get announced for top 8 for sure. It feels very good. But, anyways, so, getting into it. So, our first round of top 8, we actually played against the same players before. I believe I remember his name, but I'm not going to be saying it. This was the same player from round 3. So he immediately knew going into this that he already had a bad mood. He was already not really excited for this. He knew exactly how it was going to go. So the first game, pretty standard. Turn 2 and 3 wreck his lands, play a big creature. He couldn't beat it. Second game, I kept a very slow hand. It was going to be very good if he didn't have turn 3 Tron. He had turn 3 Tron. He was able to take care of me. The last round was probably the biggest butt whooping I've ever given in a game. Not any disrespect toward him. There was nothing he could do. But it was basically, if I went through my whole deck and I took all the cards I wanted to be able to win, that's exactly what happened. It was basically, Utopia Sprawls into Acid Moss, into Big Creature, into more Land Destruct. It was ridiculous. It wasn't even fair. But I was able to get the win off of that, which was insane. I kind of felt bad for him, and he wanted me to concede though, because the big tournament, the Invitational, which is part of the reason you play in these, was actually next weekend. I knew I wasn't going to be able to attend, and only the top 4 actually makes the Invitational. I would have actually scooped to him, but the main issue being I was still playing basically for in-store credit. So if at this point everybody would have split, I definitely would have conceded to him and let him go to the Invitational. But unfortunately, when we were playing for that, I decided I wanted to get more in-store credit, so I kept playing. Also, I didn't say this, but all these guys in the top 8, all of them were local players from the Maryland area. Basically all of them. I know, at least when I was talking to one opponent after, he basically said they all played the same card shop, which I thought was actually pretty weird. I was the random guy from Michigan. So anyways, we're getting to the next one. So this game is probably one of my favorite matches I've ever played. So I'm not going to say his name on here, but I still consistently talk to him, and we still joke about it all the time about how this game went. I guess you will see his name just from the results and stuff like that I'll show. But Nadir was playing Grishol Brand. And so I knew going into this he was playing Grishol Brand just from the fact that I had heard from other people. Which, for those not knowing Ponza that well, this is my absolute worst matchup I could possibly play against. There was actually a guy that I used to play with locally who played this deck, and I never beat him one time. He just destroyed me every time. So I knew what I had to do to win, but I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. So the first game, he basically throws in his 15-15 worm, runs me over really fast. World Spine Worm's the name of it. I take it. I'm like, you know what? There's no way I'm probably even going to win this next 2, but we're going to run it. So after a very slow game 2, he managed to not have a very good hand, at least from my understanding. And I was able to basically win with just tireless trackers for the most part. So I was even surprised to get to the third game, considering I had no graveyard hate as well. So we get to game 3. I keep a really sketchy hand. It was a couple lands, Utopia Sprawl, and Stone Rains. That's all it was. Little did I know, he told me this later, he had a turn 2 kill on me if he drew a land. But he didn't draw a land, so he wasn't able to get the turn 2 kill. I was able to keep him off with Stone Rains. I actually have another picture here I'd like to skip to from this match. So this picture right here, this is actually us in game 3, right? Nope, sorry. This was game 2. So I know the resolution's kind of low, but this is a Stormbreath Dragon right here and Carnage Tyrant. This was game 2. I ended up getting the win. Basically what happened was he... actually, no, I lied. This is not game 2. This is game 3. So basically what happened was, is if you see the clue there, that was from, I had double Tireless Tracker. And he was able to wipe the board. Then the next turn I followed up with Stormbreath Dragon, and then after that, attacked again, had Carnage Tyrant. So I knew there wasn't much he was going to be able to do. So anyways, we keep going. He's just drawing cards. I didn't think he was going to have anything. Very end, he was able to kill the Stormbreath Dragon. I was able to play another Carnage Tyrant. And it basically came down, he was at 7 life. And he only had 2 mana because he cast Bantu's Last Reckoning. So I'm thinking to myself, if he actually has anything, he can play. So he's only got 2 mana. I slowly attack with my Carnage Tyrant, and that was game. So I actually, and I feel bad for doing this, but before I shook his hand, I ran out of my chair. I was hugging my teammates. I couldn't even believe it. That was and still to this day, this is the only time I have ever beaten this deck. Was in this, against the odds, playing a really bad matchup, which was just insane. Overall, though, it was a crazy, crazy, crazy game, and I ended up winning it. I was shocked. So, I knew going into the last round, I knew I was playing against my former opponent in round 5. So, we both know what we were on. We agreed to split prizes, but still play for first place. Which originally I was going to just concede to him, but then I found out about the plaque you could win. So I tried to go for the plaque. So this almost goes the exact same way as the first round. So the first game, he runs me over. It's not even close. The second game, I had a very, very, very good hand. Was able to take the game from him. Game 3, exact same as before. So it's really, really grindy. We're trading resources. He does actually make a mistake, and he didn't cast an Abrade off of his Chandra. If he cast the Abrade, I actually would have died about 2 turns earlier. So I still had a chance to win. I ended up making a small misplay, which didn't matter in the end. Long story short, I'm at very, very low life. Instead of playing my Inferno Titan to kill his Runaway Steamkin, I just played Carnage Tyrant because I knew I was dead. And I was just, I was going to at least go out with my favorite card. And ended up looking at it. I could have killed the Runaway Steamkin. Would have had the same result, though, because he had a Bedlam Reveler in play with Chandra. It wouldn't matter at the end, and he had a Bolt and a Lava Dart. So I was still dead no matter what. There was nothing I could do. But it was really, really close. It mostly just came down to a top deck war at the very, very end, to which I wasn't able to win. It definitely... I got a little lucky, though. There was at one point I did draw Primal Command to stay alive, and that was my only out. But regardless, though, it still felt really, really nice getting that far. I never would have pictured I ever would have made it that far. It still felt unreal. To this day, it still blows my mind that I actually was able to do well at this tournament. But anyways, that's the tournament results. The ride home was definitely very nice. I felt very energized still on that 13-hour ride home. But it was very surreal. It felt like, after all the work I had put into Magic, it finally felt like it paid off. I finally had a good result. I played a deck I really, really liked, revamped it a lot too. Because at the time, nobody... I guess I'll go to the list now. But overall... It was really, really fun. I had a great time playing in this tournament. So I'll go right to the results here. So this was actually the actual list on Star City Games. I will put the link in the description if you'd like to check it out for yourself. So this was... this is the list. So another thing is what made me want to do this video is at the time of this recording, it is currently December 3rd, 2020. So this is actually 2 years ago was when I put up this result. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but... It's 2 years, so this is what we got here. So basically starting it off, we've got Arbor Elf and Birds of Paradise and Utopia Sprawl. Basically your ramp, you want to be able to be on turn 2 playing 3-mana spells. Pretty simple. I don't know why it's exactly not in order for converted mana cost. But anyways, so then you got the land destruction package. You have 4 Stone Rains. Obviously, for the turn 2 land destruction. At the time, there was no pillage, which is now in Modern, but it wasn't at the time. And then the other land destruction package you have is Mavli Acid Moss. So basically, instead of me playing Bloodbraid Elf, I wanted to play Mavli Acid Moss, because instead of spinning the random wheel, possibly getting value off of Bloodbraid Elf, I wanted to play Mavli Acid Moss because it does 2 perfect things for this deck. For one, destroys their land, messes up their tempo. The second part is you get your own forest and put it into play. So at the same time, you're disrupting them and building your board to be able to play your big hitters right here. So that's why I played the Mavli Acid Moss, just because it was really good. It's great for this deck. That's why I played 3 copies. So that's the land destruction package. Random, I guess I'll throw this in. Lightning Bolt, pretty self-explanatory. You got to play this thing if you're playing red. It's really weird not playing 4, but I needed to cut a card for a land because I play a lot of big, heavy hitters. I wanted to make sure I was hitting all my land drops. So that's why I cut a 1 Lightning Bolt, and I still play 3 Lightning Bolt to this day, and everybody still thinks I'm really weird for doing it. But that's how I've always played it. So I guess the last spell, non-creature spell I like to talk about is Primal Command. So Primal Command is a very, very old school Panza card. A lot of people, you see play to this day a little bit, but not very much. So I wanted one more 5-drop for the deck, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I decided to go with Primal Command because it did a little bit of everything I was looking to do. So target player gains 7 life, really good against Death Shadow, because you can basically hit them for 7 a lot of the time and get rid of Death Shadows. At the same time, you can keep yourself alive for the aggressive decks. Put target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library, which is obviously like a pseudo land destruction, deals with planeswalkers, anything non-creature. Pretty simple. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library. That was mostly for being able to combat the Phoenix decks and Dredge. Because, gaining 7 and resetting their whole library, a lot of the time is very backbreaking. And then at the end, search your library for a creature card and put it in your hand. That was the mode I actually ended up doing the most. It wasn't necessarily for that, but being able to grab an Inferno Titan or a Carnage Tyrant was always very nice. So this was just a really good utility card. I don't play it anymore. I think it's not quite good enough in Panza anymore to be able to play that. But nonetheless, great card. I'm very happy that I played it at the time. Also, I don't know if I said this or not. In the finals, I ended up actually drawing Primal Command, and when that was my only out, no cards in hand, was able to tuck his Chandra and gain 7 to be able to stay alive, which I thought that was awesome, but I figured I'd throw that in there. So that's what we got for the spells. Except I'll include her in a second. So we can talk about the ramp package. So Tireless Tracker, obviously very good utility card for Panza. Having a good 3-drop like this with so much value feels amazing, especially with like your fetch lands, and then you have Mavli Acid Moss. Very common thing I did was turn 2 Tracker, turn 3 Mavli Acid Moss, mess them up. I get a clue and a land, so it was really, really good. Great value. I love Tireless Tracker. Still one of my favorite cards to this day. So, rounding out here, we got the rest of our creatures. So we got Stormbreath Dragon. So, Stormbreath Dragon, it's not quite as good as it is anymore, but as soon as white gets really good again in the format, Stormbreath Dragon will see play. So, Stormbreath Dragon is really, really great, obviously, because of the haste, protection from white. Hits really hard, dodges most removal spells. It dodges Fatal Push, it dodges Lightning Bolt, it dodges Path to Exile, which were the big 3. So, Stormbreath Dragon was just a really, really great card. I did activate Monstrous a little bit. I still have done it a decent amount, but it's a really great late game mana sink, especially considering Panza typically makes a lot of mana. So, at the time, there was a couple other 5-drops I could have played. I chose Stormbreath Dragon just because at the time, there was a lot of blue-white control going on to counter the Dredge and the Arclight Phoenix decks. So I wanted a way to be able to give myself a little bit of oomph against the blue-white control decks. And then, so we go to the 1 Inferno Titan here. So I wanted to play 4 6-drops just because I was playing Acid Moss with 23 lands. I played Inferno Titan. It wasn't super relevant most of the time I honestly played it, to be honest with you. Looking back at it now, I wish I would have done Wormcoil Engine, but I had not thought of Wormcoil Engine in Panza, which I'll talk about that someday. But so at the time, Inferno Titan, I wanted another one, and I didn't want to play another Carnage Tyrant, so I decided to play Inferno Titan. And then, rounding out our creatures here, we got Carnage Tyrant, which Carnage Tyrant is basically my most iconic card. I've always liked Carnage Tyrant. At the time, they were actually very, very expensive. I know at this finish, they were around $33, $34 a piece, so they were very expensive. And I really liked Carnage Tyrant. That was one of the cards that I wanted to play. Obviously, main reason, It messes up all the control decks, and mid-range it just beats up on for the most part. It's incredibly hard to get rid of, especially if you play it turn 3. Turn 3 Carnage Tyrant is just insane. A lot of decks cannot beat that at all. I played 3 because I really wanted to punish the control mid-range decks. Pretty simple. This was definitely... I played 3 Carnage Tyrant because it's my favorite card. With Carnage Tyrant, like, realistically, I probably would have played maybe an extra Inferno Titan, maybe gone down to 1. But I've just always really liked this card. So that was why I played it. And then at the end here, we have Chandra Torch of Defiance. It's really weird playing 1. Nowadays, I play 2 Acid Moss, 2 Chandras, but at the time, I wanted 1 more 4-drop. And the 4-drops were somewhat limited, like they are now. Well, like they're not now, but at the time there was no Shifting Ceratops, there was no Questing Beast, there was no other cards I liked to play in Ponza. So Chandra just rounded out really great Planeswalker. I mean, there's no way around it. Great Planeswalker. So we'll go to the lands. Pretty simple. So the one glaring thing is you'll look at here is I only play 3 Wooded Foothills, and you're a red-green deck, so you actually want 4, like Misty Rainforest. Obviously, you would want to play 4 Wooded Foothills. So the story is I only had 2 Wooded Foothills myself at the time. I managed to borrow one from my brother, but I only had 3 Wooded Foothills. And honestly, you rarely ever grab the mountain. It's incredibly rare. So I said, you know what? I'll play 3 Wooded Foothills, and I'll play the extra Misty Rainforest. I know a lot of people ask me if I did it because of strategy. Nope, it's because I didn't have another Wooded Foothills. So that's why I was playing those, but I still wanted to play 10 fetches because of Tireless Tracker. And then the rest of it's pretty simple. You got 3 Stomping Grounds, with the 1 Kessig Wolf run, which is just incredible. I did win a few games off of that. Kessig Wolf run, really great. Play the 1 Mountain. I know some people like to play 2, but I like to play 1 just because you don't want it that often. It's actually very rare that you ever grab it. And that's why you play 9 Forest, just because that you really just need the green, because you can make red with the Birds of Paradise and the Utopia Sprawl. So you really just want the 1 Mountain, because you cannot put Utopia Sprawl on the mountain. So that was the main thing. And the sideboard was pretty honestly standard somewhat for the time. I know there was a lot of different cards I played. Let's jump into it though. So 2 Relic Progenitus, obviously really great card. Holds of the Graveyard decks. Looking back at it now, I should have played more Relics. But I was only playing 2 at the time. We got the 1 Trinisphere. I would have actually played more Trinispheres at the time, except I could only get my hands on 1. My 1 teammate had 1 I could borrow. I would have played 2 to 3 if I had them, but I only had 1, and it was good enough. I know there was a couple times it was very clutch for having the 1. 2 Obstinate Baloth, pretty self-explanatory. Gains me life. Pretty good against Liliana of the Veil, which I'm not really that good against with Ponza. Just does a little bit of everything. It's a 4/4 beater. Really good against burn, some of the aggressive decks. Scavenging is pretty self-explanatory. Just, the card is awesome. I don't even really have to explain it. You bring it in against Graveyard, you bring it against mid-range. It's just an amazing card. Abrade is for utility, obviously, if I need to kill some smaller creatures, also destroy some artifacts. Abrade, perfect card for honestly for Ponza, because it does what you need to do against the bad matchups for the most part. Got the 1 Beast Within. Pretty self-explanatory. It kills any permanent that it can target. It's just a good catch-all card, bringing in as Planeswalkers. I bring it in as an extra land destruction spell. It does a little bit of everything. Beast Within, awesome card. Then we got the 1 Rurk Thar. Rurk Thar obviously just really punishes the Storm decks. Obviously this can hurt yourself too, but you only bring this in typically for Storm in Phoenix because it has reach. That's the only time I ever bring it in. Great card though. Love Rurk Thar. 1 Nissa Vital Force. So at the time, earlier in the week, I actually had a Garruk Primal Hunter in my sideboard at the time. And I won't name the player, but he's led me in the good direction a lot. And he said, hey, hear me out, play Nissa Vital Force. So I was skeptical at the time, decided to play it. Amazing. Amazing card. Nissa Vital Force does a little bit of everything you want. There was only one time in particular I played it, and that was in the blue-white control matchup, and it won me the game. I happened to resolve it, and he couldn't beat it. I turned all my lands into 5/5s. He'd wipe the board. I'd take it down, grab my Stormbreath Dragon back. Could not beat Nissa Vital Force. That card is a wrecking machine. Unfortunately, not as good now because of Nissa Who Shakes the World, but Nissa Vital Force, amazing Planeswalker. Round at the end here, we got 2 Anger of the Gods, pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it board wipes. That's exactly what it's there to do. It does exactly that. And then at the end, we got 1 Shatterstorm. So Shatterstorm obviously is pretty self-explanatory. You get rid of all the artifacts. Like that's what it's meant to do. I can't remember if KCI was a deck at the time. I'm honestly drawing a blank. It might have been for that, but it was also for Affinity as well. But yeah, that's pretty much the basis of the deck. Overall, I really like this list. I had a really great time playing it. Let me get back to full screen here. Overall, definitely one of my favorite tournaments I've ever played in. It felt really good to finally get that decent sized accomplishment. For me, it's a really big accomplishment. I know for Pro Tour players, it's like nothing at this point. But looking back at it, that was really when my Magic career was turned around, when I was able to make top 8 at that. Just because for a long time, I'd only had one top 8. And still, even after this tournament, at the time I was 19. So typically a lot younger than a lot of the other Magic players. And a lot of people considered, oh, he's a kid. You know, he got really lucky. He shouldn't have made top 8. But at this time, it was kind of when people started realizing I was a decent Magic player. It felt really nice. It was a lot different actually playing a deck that was somewhat actually a deck. It's a lot different though. I'll reiterate that again. A lot of people actually have been starting to play cards because of that deck list, which is really nice. Biggest reason is I wanted to play Carnage Tyrant and Stormwrath Dragon. If it wasn't for those cards, I wouldn't have ever played the deck. But no, it was very nice. It was a very good top 8. It's not my favorite top 8, though. I will maybe discuss that in another video. But overall, had a really great time at that tournament. Another thing I'd actually like to talk about real quick is, in addition to, the little kid luck thing, was it definitely stunk because a lot of people didn't like me. It seemed like just because I was young and doing somewhat successful at tournaments. But definitely this one was kind of, I'm not necessarily the kind of person that needs everybody to think I'm a good Magic player. I don't need that. But at least for some of those people that specifically didn't like me as a player, at least it was finally nice to say, hey, I got this now. So that was really nice. The best part of it though, at the end, was just being able to do really well with my favorite cards. It's the greatest feeling, honestly, and that's why I only play decks that I really like to play. Hence, Gruul Dinos on Arena and stuff like that, because I think those decks are fun. But overall, that's all I have for you. I'd like to thank you for joining me. I always love talking about these stories and stuff like that. I do plan on doing more, depending on how this one does. But overall, this was a really fun video. I actually really liked talking about this. Just nice to talk about yourself a little bit. Kind of where you're from, but overall, that's really all I have for you. I'd like to thank you for joining me. If you're watching this from YouTube, just hit that subscribe button. It's great. Really helped me out. If you want to follow me on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/commander_crane. We stream Arena, basically Magic Arena, Magic Online, and then Pokemon VGC. If you could just follow me there, that'd be great. It really helps the channel out a lot. If I get more viewers, I'll get a little bit better equipment. Like I did get some better supplies and stuff like that, which definitely helped out the quality. But overall, I'd like to thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.